Alright, so I have some concerns that need to be addressed. Now, I understand in the past I used to do these like SmackDown videos. That's not what I'm doing. I've had time to reflect on all of this, and I feel terrible. I've destroyed countless YouTube channels by doing them. It's not what I'm going to do today. I'm just trying to tweak the moral compass just a little bit. So, let's get started. We're going to get started by saying, if you'd like to help support the channel, the best way to do that is purchase this bad boy right here, which has not one, but two Scar 17s on one patch and a Freedom Star with a Velcro backing you can use to stick directly to your tactical gear. So, alright, what are we talking about here? This would be the video that Armed Attorneys dropped. It's about SB 787. Video was on point. Really good video right up until the end, and we're going to talk about that in a second. And the reason I'm just trying to help them tweak their moral compass just a little bit is because they're going to be heavy hitters in the community. Great production quality, great crew.
Out of Houston. Now,
really solid information, and there's going to be a lot of people that follow them. So, let's address it now before it becomes a bigger problem. What they're talking about with SB 787 is a minimum of 10 years for all gun charges, which is absurd. So basically, if you're jaywalking but you got a gun, I don't know the details of it, but it sounds like that would have a minimum 10-year sentence, which is ridiculous, because we're talking about crimes that could possibly not even have a victim in it. Does the crime have a victim? Yes or no? I mean, that should be the first thing we ask here. If we're talking about a gun crime that doesn't have a victim, is it really even a crime? I mean, that's arguable with the Second Amendment and the Bruin decision. And one of the points they majorly touch on is with the 10-year sentence, it's going to prevent people from going to trial.
You have to have that conversation with the client. Look, I know that you're not guilty. You have 4 guaranteed right here. If the jury finds you guilty because they are wild, you get no less than 25. And that sucks for an innocent person to hear and to have to make that kind of decision with their future.
Because they will look and be like, okay, so they're willing to plea bargain me down to 4. Or if I go to trial, you know, hypothetically speaking, I have a minimum of 10 years. Even if I'm innocent, I could spend half the amount of time in prison if I were to take that particular plea bargain. I've been through this process. I totally get it. I'm 100% innocent, but you look at the plea bargain and you're like, phew. I mean, I'm really throwing the dice out on the table if I take this to trial. And honestly, I was pretty scared until I looked up the trial stats. So it turns out that 99.7 conviction rate that the ATF always throws around like, yeah, we got a 99.7 conviction rate, turns out to be all propaganda, and it was put into place to reduce the amount of people that take their cases to trial. Look, in a 10-year period, 25%, so it's like 1,000 and some change that now go to trial, when 10 years ago, this was from 2018 to 2008, there was 6,000 and some. The propaganda has been insanely effective. And this will even make it worse. Less people will take their cases to trial. So what the real numbers are, out of all the people that go to federal court, the actual ones that go to trial and convicted on all charges are less than 1%. If you remove the ones that plea bargain out, and you just look at only cases that went to trial, the ones where they got a full conviction was only 22%. You have a 75% chance of at least getting some of your charges dropped. Because remember, they got a conviction on something, just not a full conviction. So they might have had a self-defense situation in their house, they winded up dropping the person, and then they dropped the loaf on his face, and then they were found guilty for desecrating a corpse. You don't know. You'd have to go a case-by-case basis to decide whether or not that is a win for the defendant or the prosecution. It could go either way. So I don't feel those numbers can be counted. We can only look at full acquittals and full convictions. So only 22% get a full conviction. Everything less than 22%, the jury finds the prosecution either not honest or the crimes don't, or the charges don't fit the crimes. Something or another happens to where they're not charged with 100% of their crimes. And again, it could be something as you went to trial for murder, battery, disorderly conduct, and jaywalking, and you got convicted on jaywalking. You never know. Again, you have to look at it by a case-by-case basis. The point, again, is they only win, just counting the cases that go to trial, 22%. Now, here's where I disagree with the armed attorneys on this particular thing, because they said this bill could be easily remedied by saying that we'll just have the minimum 10 years for unlawful possession of a firearm.
If we just focus on the people who are unlawfully possessing firearms,
Yes.
I think that actually fixes it.
It fixes it because it's taking your felons and your criminals and your people who are,
Committing robberies.
In a bar, in a school, having the firearm in places they're not supposed
People
to.
are possessing stolen guns.
Yeah.
The problem with that is, what is unlawful possession of a firearm? And who is the arbiter of truth, the person with infinite wisdom that decides what is and is not lawful possession, is or is not in lawful possession of a firearm? For example, in my particular case, I even called the ATF and cleared it with them before I took the advertising contract, and they turned around and said the whole thing was unlawful. Do you trust the ATF? Well, what about with a brace pistol? If everything goes sideways and that becomes unlawful possession, that's a minimum of 10 years. What about anything? Like anything at all? Do you really trust somebody to put them in a position of the arbiter of truth and let them decide what is and is not lawful possession of a firearm? Because it could be anything. You could have it so, I don't know, a school zone or something like that. You're going down the sidewalk, CCW, and you happen to chew on the sidewalk or something. You get arrested for disorderly conduct. They find a firearm, and now you're facing 10 years for spitting on a sidewalk just because you were too close to a school or a post office or something like that. The point is, unlawful is not a very good place to stand. Because, again, who is going to be the arbiter of truth? Who is going to decide what is and is not lawful? And if you have a minimum of 10 years, if they can squeak it through like, oh, well, this particular firearm had XYZ, or you were in XYZ, or at once upon a time, when you were 18, you caught this charge, but you never actually went and bought a firearm from a gun shop, so you didn't realize that you were in unlawful possession of that particular firearm. So because you got disorderly conduct when you were 18, that carried a sentence over 1 year, and you never bought a firearm from a gun shop, so you had no idea you were a prohibited person, you're unlawful. I think that's just a terrible mistake. You should never give somebody the power to be able to do something like that. What I suggest how this bill gets changed is, if the only crime itself is the gun, it shouldn't matter. Now, if there is a victim, well, obviously there's some other crime you can charge them with. Say you shoot someone, well, you can charge them with murder, and that 10 years doesn't really mean anything. Say it's aggravated robbery, you can charge them with aggravated robbery, and that gun charge doesn't mean anything. The point of the fact of the matter is, this is secret gun control. They're trying to say that, oh, look at those criminals, we want to make tough laws on them. What you don't realize is when they're talking about those criminals, that actually circles around to you. You are lumped into that box. So a whole bunch of people found out about that during the lockdowns. They moved like locusts from gun shop to gun shop to gun shop, buying everything. Firearms, ammunition, knives, anything whatsoever, because all of a sudden they're put in a position where a reason to have a firearm is right in front of their face. And then they're like, hey, Mr. Gun Shop guy, why am I getting delayed? Why am I getting denied? I never broke a gun law in my life. Why am I lumped in with those criminals? I wanted to be tough on them and to keep the firearms out of the hands of the criminals. Why are they being kept out of my hands? Because they're not talking about the criminals. That's just secret gun control language. They're talking about everyone. Now, I get the whole thing, like, I trust myself with firearms, but do I really trust my neighbor? If that's your way of thinking, does your neighbor really trust you? What if you're the one that's in this particular situation? I mean, honestly, like, there's so many different stupid ways you could find yourself in unlawful possession of a firearm. This is just dumb as a whole. What SB 787 needs to say is that if a gun is the sole crime, there's no other crime, like as in there's no victim, it's the gun itself, prosecution is denied. That would be a good bill. That would be a bill that would make America better. That would be a bill that would honor the Second Amendment. Remember, the Second Amendment is not a document from the government telling the people what they can and can't do. The Second Amendment is from the people. Notice at the top of the Constitution it says, we the people. It's a document from the people telling the government what they're allowed to do when it comes to gun laws. It's very clear. Shall not be infringed. And again, like, I get you guys are lawyers and you're going to have to take compromises in court, but when you're the face of the Second Amendment community, you got to get your shit together. There's a very clear path. Shall not be infringed. Anything other than that is just gun control. So if you're in support of anything other than shall not be infringed, you're in support of gun control. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with not being in support with the Second Amendment? Sorry, I got a little excited and I kind of went a little bit hard there at the end. Again, love your channel. I really do, but I think you missed on this one. There's been a couple other videos I haven't made a response video to where I believe you missed on those as well. But I'm just letting that go. Again, this isn't a bash video or me trying to like hurt you in any way, shape, or form. I believe your compass is pretty damn near north, but I just want to correct it just a little bit. Because again, you're the face of the Second Amendment community. What you say does matter. Anyway, again, if you'd like to help support the channel, this patch is an excellent way to do this. It really is. And now the courts are putting the pressure on me, and they said I have to now show up at every single court hearing, which is on the other side of the country. So I have to drive, me and my family, all the way to the other side of the country, and we seem to have one of these about once a month. We spend between $3,000 to $5,000 for all the hotels, all the gas, all the food, and then all the way back. We'll cut the difference and call it $4 grand. My monthly expenses just got increased by $4 grand. Honestly, this makes that all go away. Appreciate all you guys' support. Otherwise, there's always my affiliate links in the description down below. Just by clicking on those links, even if you don't purchase what that particular link is for, just clicking on it and doing the Amazon shopping you were already going to do anyway, it'll kickback for it because you came there off my channel. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.